So what I'm going to speak today, so we've already been, it's been said that we do Jeevanoddhara of texts. This is one of these cases where I would really like to do Jeevanoddhara, the Sarvajñānottaratantra. And what you see on the screen is some of the sources. This is a manuscript from the 9th century from Nepal. This is one that's here in Pondicherry. It's a manuscript, incredible, you can see that very badly damaged, acidity in the paper, the thing is broken and is coming apart. So what we have for this, maybe we could move to the next one. The Sarvajñānottara is a very important text. So I'm just going to mention that we have traces of mentions of this particular text in the epigraphy even of Southeast Asia. So this is an inscription from Cambodia. Yes, so here I've highlighted a bit. It's a bit difficult to read, but that's where it's talking about the Sarvajñānottaratantra. So it's a part of a praise of a particular guru who was called Sarvajñā Muni, I think, and therefore the Agamas mentioned that he knew, headed the Sarvajñānottara. Could you have the next? So here, a couple of instances I've given, that was the one we were looking at here, and somebody else here is said to be Tasyasye Samhita Sarvas Sarvajñānottaratantra Sarvajñam Iva Ditsyanto Tisthiras Tasthiri Dhi. So in the mouth of that Shivacharya, this is somebody in 10th century Cambodia, in the mouth of that Shivacharya, Tasyasye, all the scriptures, such as the Sarvajñānottara, Sarvāna Samhita, Sarvajñānottaratantra, stayed, Tasthiri, extremely stable, Atisthiraha, as though wishing to impart, as though wishing to give, omniscience, Sarvajñam, to his mind, his spirit, Diye. Could you have the next? Yes, so there are various, you will have heard of the Sarvajñānottara because there are many editions of this text. So this is the first one. It's an edition from Devakote, and it contains, but the thing about this is it contains only a very small number of the chapters. It contains the chapters which are basically doctrinal. And here, Dr. Gunningson, who's just entering the room, he has edited the Yogapada with the commentary about Lord Shiva, which in fact is very short. I think it's about 30 verses. So this corresponds in my numbering following the manuscripts to chapter 27. This edition covers chapters 28 to 31, and it has rather large interpolations, that's to say, things that come from other material that have entered into the text and are not found in any of the manuscripts. So this is a chunk from the Sutta Samhita, the Skanda Purana, for example, and then which is debating the question of whether Diksha is necessary. There are also passages where embryology, the Garbha, the different stages, the Peshi, and so forth, different stages of development of the human embryo are described. And in all the manuscripts, these are in prose and rather short formulae. And here in this text, they've been rather roughly rewritten in Anglican. In other words, this edition has a number of real problems, and it covers only a very small portion of the text, these chapters. Next, please. Then there's this edition from Tanjavur, which is actually very good, I think, with, as you see, Tamil translation. But again, it covers a very tiny portion of the text. Tiny. It's a certain chunk of the text, but maybe corresponding to about 15 to 20%. Next. Yeah, and then there's this thesis by Vaidyanathan from the University of Pondicherry. I don't think I've ever met him or encountered him.
No, you haven't.
Anyway, very impressive. He has edited the entirety of the text in this way. I mean, this is handwritten, and it contains all the chapters, but it first gives them these ones, the ones from the end of the book, which are the ones which are generally published, and then it gives these ones. So the text is disordered in this edition, and I think that the other thing one can say about it is, although it's very impressive, he's done all this work, it's very difficult to understand what the text is about in a number of places. It's definitely not, because there are not enough manuscripts. He did not know enough manuscripts. Next. Yeah, so notably he didn't know about this manuscript. So this is the 9th century manuscript of Nepal. This makes a very big difference to the text, as you can imagine. Unfortunately, you could tell that there were 57 folios, now there are only 35 surviving. And it's not at all standard in Sanskrit, and there are a lot of mistakes. But anyway, this makes a huge difference to how much we can understand of the text. Next. Yes, so this one also, I think this one he did know, but I'm not quite sure. I would have to look again. Because this one, as I was saying, because the acidity of the paper is very damaged, some parts shine through from the previous other side, and it covers about half the text with the commentary of Aghora Shiva. Next. Yeah, sorry, that's just to show you what it really looks like. It's perfectly legible most of the time, but not all the time. Next. And then this one he also didn't know, and this one is very important text. This is now in Trivandrum, but I think it comes from Madurai, because there are various allusions to the deities of Madurai in the paratextual material. And well, as you can see, it's rather beautiful, let's say extremely neatly written Grantha manuscript, and this covers the entire text with the commentary of Aghora Shiva. But it is also extremely corrupt in many places. Let's say you try and read it, it really doesn't make sense. So, next. Then we have this one, which covers part of the text with Aghora Shiva's commentary. And it has a lot of blank passages. I haven't shown you such a page, but the pages where lots of text is just gaps are left. So it's damaged. It covers a different portion of the text from the first Grantha one I showed you. So in other words, they do not overlap at all. They're totally separate. Next. Yes, and then there are a whole lot of little bits of manuscripts which I have gradually over the years found. So this one is currently in Chandigarh, and it gives us chapter 9, and then I think chapters 28 to 30. So not the whole thing, but with the commentary of Aghora Shiva again. So it was in Lahore, then it went to Lahore-Shiarpur, and then I finally tracked it down in Chandigarh. This one is in the UML. It contains from about chapter 6 to about chapter 15, and then it contains a little bit towards the end of the text in the chapters which are most commonly edited. And you can see it's rather a typical case. Somebody copied it, and then later, you can see written in pencil, somebody finally identified what it is they were copying. I think that this is a common problem. We have all these fragments of the Sarvajñānottaratantra in different places. It's not, if you're missing the beginning and the end, well then you don't know what your text is until you do further research and so forth. And this is another such case. This is T83 here in our French Institute. And well, now it's been identified. I think you might have used it for the yoga path. I can't remember whether it has the yoga path because I've covered it down here. But it has the final chapters, that's to say 28 to 31, which, by the way, are divided slightly differently in the sources. So some make them into 6 chapters when they're external sources. Anyway, there the whole thing was copied. Shaivagamāksha Grantha Vishayānukramanika. So we get a little contents list, and it was clear when this was being copied that nobody knew what it was. And only in pencil, again, on the front cover, somebody has added Sarvajñānottaratantra. So over time they might identify that. And my hope is that we will find more fragments like this in other libraries of the Sarvajñānottara, because there are many passages, and I was going to show you some today, where I really cannot understand. Having collated all the sources that I have found that give testimony to this or that particular chunk of text, I cannot understand what the text is trying to say. It is still too damaged.
Excuse me, what is the Chandigarh content chapters?
So it's a big manuscript containing the Mrigendra with, I think, both the commentary of Narada and then Aghora Shiva, and then it has at the end maybe 100 folios or something, or Sarvajñānottaratantra, and it has chapter 9. Chapter 9 is the Bhuvanat one, so a very long description of the Bhuvanas, the world system of the Sarvajñānottaratantra, and then it has the doctrinal section from the end, incomplete. I think you can perhaps see there's a colophon here, something like, sorry, I think I looked at it somewhere, but anyway, it ends, I think, with the chapter that's sometimes called Paramikaranam. Next. Yes, so what does the Sarvajñānottara contain? So we've seen other accounts from the Viragama, for example, and people have quoted a great deal from the Karmika. When you look at texts like the Karmika, what you see is a very large proportion of the text is devoted in one way or the other to what is happening in the Shiva temple. That's to say, whether it's Pratishtha, or you're preparing the site for Pratishtha, so the Karshana, or it's about the Nitya Puja, or different things that happen in different particular months, or the various people who work in the temple. All of these things are very prominent themes. In fact, I would say more prominent than anything else in the Karmika, at least the chapters that I have looked at. And the Karmika, one topic that is rather small in the Karmika is the topic of Diksha. Here, we're in a universe which is completely different. You see all these, so I'm going to get one to the end. All these ones in red, it seems to me, are really about Diksha. So we start with Bhuparigraha, but it's quite clear this is not Bhuparigraha for building a temple. This is Bhuparigraha for setting up a sort of mandapa where Diksha is going to take place. Then we have Dikshangani, the various things you need for Diksha. Bhuvanat, a long explication of the cosmos, because you get to read it for the principal Diksha. Then you get a sort of shortened Diksha, Panchatattva Diksha, a Diksha for somebody who is deceased, Mrita Diksha, and then a special kind of Anteshti, which is in fact a sort of Diksha also in this text, which is for, it's explained that if somebody is, after they've died and some crimes have been committed, then it's a sort of prayashchitta. Then we have Lingodhara, and that's actually about removing the religious traces of somebody's conversion. So people who have followed some other religion and now they are being converted. And so this too is a sort of Diksha, or rather it's preparatory to that Diksha. And then we have Abhisheka, which is for Sadhika and Acharya. And then a Sankhya Abhisheka, which seems just to consist in sanctifying water with mantras in a certain number of pots and pouring them over the Acharya. And if you're short of funds, it's explained, then you could do this Sankhya Abhisheka, and then the person's question can straight away become a Sadhika or Acharya. And then, yes, well, this is equipment which is required. More, we probably should have gone into the details. So these chapters here, this is about mantras and about Nitya Puja, and it is not, the context is not that of a temple. These chapters here are the ones which are published with the asterisks. These are all really mystical, the metaphysics, sort of doctrinal passages. And this section of the text, why is it published again and again, and why is it in so many manuscripts? The reason is because I think that in the 16th century, Shaivism became again more non-dualistic, and there are a lot of meditations in which the self is identified with God, and the position of the Shastra, I should have said that at the beginning. The Sarvajñānottara propounds Advaita, non-dualist doctrine, and this makes it unique among the surviving texts of the Shaiva Siddhanta, that it has this very clear Advaita teaching. And that is concentrated in these chapters, and those chapters in, I would think, 15th, 16th century and onwards became then very much impacted again. For a long time, if you look at the writings of the formative thinkers like Bhattarānapanta, Bhattanārāyanapanta, Aghora Shiva, Kalosha Shivacharya, Gyana Shiva, is Gyana Nathnāvi, all of these people do not quote very much from the Sarvajñānottara. And I think that one reason is that it had the wrong kind of doctrine, at least. I think this is one factor. I think another factor is that, in fact, its Bhavanadvan is very eccentric. It misses out, it does not have 36 tattvas, it has 32 avaranas or something. So I think that it had all kinds of doctrinal positions which became slightly out of favour, and as a result it's not much quoted. But then in the 16th century it hit the limelight again for this section of text with all its teachings on Advaita, and then that's why we have so many manuscripts which just have this chunk, and why we have so many editions as well which cover this chunk of material. But the rest, to me, is absolutely fascinating. It's extremely, I think that it is a very ancient text. Exactly how ancient we cannot know, but I think that it dates to a period when in the Mantra Marga, that is to say, in the Shaiva Siddhanta, there was not a focus on what happened in the temple. Temples existed, temples were definitely part of life, temples were important, but the Mantra Marga saw itself as furnishing instructions for liberation, and hence this enormous concentration on Diksha. And then the ones in blue, I haven't yet addressed them, but those are the only ones which say anything about the temple. And what they say seems to furnish there's rituals for Pratishtha, and then these other modified types of Pratishtha, and notably Jnanodhara. And it's as though the model is that Sadhaka, in fact, this text does not distinguish systematically between Acharya, Sadhaka, Buddhaka, and Samana. The sadhaka is called in to do pratishtha in certain temples, but then there is no interest in the day-to-day running of the temple, how the temple functions in the long term, and no utsavas, all of these things are simply missing. You only have pratishtha. As I say, I think that this is from a very archaic stage, and the text is very interesting because of what it reveals about the early history of the Mantra. I didn't mention this section really is about the individual sadhaka, karma yogin, with so his kamandalu, which functions as a ritual assistant if he doesn't have a ritual assistant. It's explained that if normally the sadhaka would have an uttara sadhaka, a second person who helps him, but if he doesn't, then he can use his kamandalu. This is what's explained in this short chapter. And then Snana Bhikshacharya, that's a very interesting chapter about Bhiksha. It's very clear that this person, maybe I will come to talk about that, but it's clear that we're not in a monastic context with a lot of people. This is the individual sadhaka who has a sort of hut, very small dimension, which is described as his japalayam, and he sleeps there and he eats there, and there is no commentary about at all, and nothing about how it fits in with the temple. So I think that one can see all of this and all of this as really being about the centered on salvation of the individual, and that's what the text is about. But being a religious professional, if somebody calls on this individual to do some pratishtha, then he must be able to do that. And that's why we have these sections. And these sections I was going to try and look at today, maybe we could look at the next. Pratishtha Jnanodhara Pratimadi. Sorry, just before I get to that, one of the things that's also very archaic in the doctrine of the Sarvajñānottaratantra, not only is it non-dualist, but it seems to have a teaching about Mala. So if you're familiar with it, this is from the Sangha, Karma, Maya, Mala, the three Pashas. This is absolutely universal. But except that when we look at the earliest texts, like the Nishwasa Tattva Samhita, the various early recensions of the Kalottara, the Rāla Sutra Sangha, and it turns out the Sarvajñānottara, there is no clear teaching on Mala, so it seems to me. Next. Yes, and that's interesting because, so you may know this inscription, this is that we're here in Kanchi, this is the Kailasanatha temple, it's now called, and this is the first document, I think, surviving that refers to the Shaiva Siddhanta, and it's describing the king, so we probably have to read this as a compound. This is a mistake. Shakti Kshanari Vargo Vidita Bahumayas Shaiva Siddhanta Margi Imam Atyanta Kama Kshata Sakala Malo, and I can go to the rest. But you can see that it's referring to him as, this is one of the spirits, and so he's Shakti Chunarivaga, presumably refers to the Arivaga, that is to say the internal group of the enemies have been crushed, Chunna, by Shakti. Ambiguous, it could mean spear, because he's referring to external enemies, but also it refers to Shakti in Diksha. So he's one whose internal enemies have been crushed by Shakti, Shiva Shakti. Shakti Chunarivaga. Reading about Bhavana, that's a bit uncertain exactly what that means. He maybe knew many systems of thought. And he was Kshata Sakala Mala. He was one the entirety of whose Mala had been destroyed. So I think that this is a little bit significant because I would say that this provides not only the first attestation of the label Shaiva Siddhanta, but it also provides evidence that the Shaiva Siddhanta doctrine contained as an important teaching about Mala. Sorry, next one please. How am I doing for time? Probably I should skip this. This was an early attempt a few years ago to produce a sort of map, chronological map of violence. And in the middle here is the Sarvajñānottaratantra, and then we start to get the first attested names in inscriptions ending in Shiva, suggesting initiation. Next, please. And then after that, we get the first references, I think, to Mala. So in discussion by Pondicherry and then in this inscription. So I think that the Sarvajñānottaratantra is really quite early. I think we have to skip. Yes. So we just get a couple of examples at the end. So appropriately, I start with Jīranodhara, since this is a sort of Jīranodhara. So you see that it starts here, Tatra Jīranodhara, Dagdhi Kshine Tamalingi, Vortamanam Tamalingi, Chali Padutaksthana, Krishnadeshi Lingahapagi. So what this seems to be talking about is if the linga has been damaged, kshine, or burnt. Now that may seem rather surprising, but as we later learn, one of the primary substances for making the linga is wood. So this is again, this seems old, it seems archaic. We do not see wooden lingas all over the place anymore, except specifically the Bala linga is sometimes said to be wood. But and I said this is Jīranodhara, the text. If you look at the apparatus here, this is the reading only in the first of the Granthi manuscripts on very worn out paper that I showed you. All the other sources have something absolutely gibberish. So here in this the manuscript of Trivandrum, we have Kshine Tava, which is not even metrical. Then we have Gandhi Kshine Yapa in one of the manuscripts which I didn't show you. This is one from this institution, T760. And Gandhi Kshine Yada in L. Those are the only sources we have. Fortunately, we have this one, which tells us that the word is Dagdhi. And then we have further confirmation when we reach Aghorishiva's commentary, because he explains that it means Dahani Dushti Lingi. So somehow one needs every document to try and reconstruct something that gives sense. The ritual itself is not explained in great detail, but as I say, it has these interesting, it sheds an interesting light on some facts of the past, like, for instance, that wooden lingas seem to have been a common thing. This is, by the way, something we find also in the Kirana, where it's again distorted in addition, because we have every time the word Varksham comes, Varksham meaning Rikshopavam, it is distorted in almost all the South Indian manuscripts, and you cannot read what it says. But the old Nepalese manuscript restores Varksham. Maybe we have time for one more. Yes, so this is, this is from the long Pratishta chapter. Maybe we move on to it. That's just to show you how much variation there is, even for a small chunk of text. That is what I find in the various manuscripts when getting all the manuscript reading together. And they're kind of crazily random, at least so there are just enormous numbers of mistakes. And when you have only a very small number of manuscripts, this means that it's evidence, I think, that the text has been worn into shreds in certain parts. So those last 6 chapters or 5 chapters are very well transmitted. We can really reconstruct the text very well. Some of the chapters are like that, but unfortunately these more technical chapters are really in ribbons. It will be very difficult unless I find some more to reconstruct. Next, sorry. This is just a close-up of this. It was to show you that there are the pieces of information about how the temple is to be made, and in this case it refers to the Lokapalas, Indra Pavaka Dharmesha Nirriti Varnanilam Kuberam Chatathaicham Sthapi. It's about how around the prasada we have shrines which look inwards and they have the Lokapalas in them. I've never seen a temple which has exactly this. Of course, many temples from all over India have Lokapalas around the temple in some way, but this configuration seems unique. Let's say I've never seen. If you ever see one, tell me. Maybe next we just have the next one more. Can we go close, or is that yes? So here, this is another thing which tells us about the temple. Dvaradeshe Bahistapyao Durga Vikna Vinayakao Stapyao Nandi Mahakalo Shivasya Pulta Sada. Yeah, just a small detail that shows you this is really not South Indian, because the doorkeepers here are Nandi and Mahakala, which seems to be a very strong feature through all the early literature. But it's very rare to see in South India Dwarapalakas as Nandi Mahakala. So we just look at the next couple of photos. Yeah, I mean, when we look at the Dwarapalakas, we're more used to this kind of thing, where you see the features are sort of generalized. Both of them have a club and these little horns here, and then a gesture of Tanjani in this case, Vismaya in this case. But in any case, they're not, you cannot see anything that suggests that they are Nandi and Mahakala. Next. If we go back earlier in South India, you can see the origin of the horns. It's the Trishula Purusha. You can see there's actually a line on the blades that's picked out, and there's a spike of the Trishula at the top.